I'd just quickly like to say a little bit about myself, because it is kind of relevant to how I get to do what I did. I was actually raised as an English vicar's daughter, so they always rebel and are very wicked, so that's one of the keys. Now, when I was 23, as it said in my intro, I was diagnosed with retinitis pigmentosa, which is a degenerative eye disease. And the biggest effect it had on me at the time, because I was, as I say, only 23, it knocked my sexual self-esteem for six. Suddenly I had to see myself as somebody with a disability. And although it was something that you couldn't see, it wasn't obvious, it wasn't like I had to walk with a stick or anything, I just suddenly felt as if I wasn't sexy anymore because I was a disabled person. And I'd only recently got engaged, but I had this ridiculous thought that no one's ever going to want to have an affair with me. And I didn't want to have an affair, but I wanted somebody to want to have an affair with me. And it made me realise that your self-esteem, your sexual self-esteem is quite fragile, and it can be dented by a number of things. You know, I'm sure, you know, for girls who go through adolescence who get really severe acne, it must really knock their self-esteem for six. Then I went on to have my family, and I went through exactly what all young mums go through. I breastfed my sons, and my libido went completely out the window. I think when you're being touched intimately all day long by a little child, the last thing you want is someone else to touch you intimately at any other time. So, and I was aware of having to negotiate the stresses and strains that put on my relationship. I then noticed over the years some of my friends were separating, some people were having affairs. And all these things brought back to me the fact that your sexuality is a huge part of being a human being. If a human being's personality is like a pie chart, you know, we've got our sporting interests and our hobbies and our political beliefs and our family life and all the rest. Our sexuality is part of that. And in our society, we can tend to trivialise it and think of it as just being something, you know, silly and not important. But it's very important, and it's really worth focusing on and trying to maintain a healthy sexuality on into your life. So when my kids were teenagers, and I'd done a bit of study, and I knew that I was a talented person, and I knew I had something to offer the world, and I didn't want to have just been, and this isn't to be denigrating stay-at-home mums at all, because I loved that time, but I wanted to prove that I could do something in the world. And I saw a documentary on SBS about women and pornography, and on that there was a panel, and there was a woman who'd opened a shop in Sydney, which has since closed. And it just struck me as I watched it that here's this aspect of life that is really important, that's handled incredibly badly in our media and our society. And the only commercial ventures that have anything to do with sex tend to be predominantly for men, pretty sleazy, all about instantaneous gratification, very little information for people in long-term relationships, very little on offer for anyone who's differently abled. And so I decided to open a sex shop for women, and I opened Bliss in 1996 in Melbourne. And I thought, what would I like? Because first of all, I went and researched it by visiting a few shops, and, you know, walking into those shops, you're like, oh my good God. And so I thought, I want to set it up the way I would like a shop like that to be. Soft-edged, discreet, intelligent, with a specialist bookshop, and not just, you know, nonsense, and not you know, oppressive pornography and all the rest of it. So, not long into running Bliss, I got invited to speak at a day they had at the Royal Women's Hospital. It was called a Healthy, Wealthy Women's Day, and it was a combination of people talking about women taking control of their financial lives and health issues. And the speaker before me was talking about menopause. I was about 42 or 3 at the time. And it seems to me that menopause is one of the best kept secrets, that we don't talk about it. It's sort of like hush hush. And suddenly this woman's talking about all these things that can happen, and I thought, oh my good God, you know, I've never even heard of half these things about your collagen levels dropping off and this, that and the other. And then, of course, when I started to get a little bit older and I started to get the symptoms, again I realised that this is another time in life. So in your life stages, you know, you're a baby and you become a toddler, and then you become a primary school kid, then you move on to high school, you go on to uni, perhaps you might start a family, get a job, follow a career. All these stages involve change, and all these changes involve some kind of loss. There are things that you lose when you move on in life, but you always see it as a progression. But for a lot of women, I think that when they become 40, instead of seeing it as just another step on life's journey, they see it as the start of a decline, and they see it as the beginning of the end, and that it's the starting of losing things. But in this modern age, our average lifespan is now into our 80s, so at 40 you're actually probably only halfway through your life. So I think it's very, very important to actually go into training for your older years, and not because you feel that you should and it would be a good thing to do, and oh, I think I'll beat myself up because I didn't go to the gym or whatever, but because you're going to enjoy life more if you've got a certain level of physical strength, if you're reasonably healthy, if you're not exhausted and you're mobile, you can walk around, you can do things. That second half of your life can actually be fantastic, and particularly for women, because when women are children, often we're very focused on being good little girls. A lot of us grew up being good little girls. Then when we wanted to be good students and get good marks. And then if we were working, we wanted to be good at our job. If we started a family, we wanted to be the best mum in the world, and, you know, and have the best home in the world. And with each of those steps, it's easy to lose ourselves and to move further and further away from knowing ourselves as individuals. I remember once my sister-in-law said that she was talking to a friend about when she used to be a nurse, and her little girl said to her, "Mummy, before you were a mummy, were you a person?" And when you get to the 40s, it's a time to start taking stock and looking to the future and thinking, I'm now moving into a time where perhaps if I've got children, they're getting older and more independent. Don't do everything for them. Don't do their laundry. Don't clean their bedroom. Make them start to do things for themselves, not just because it's a good thing for them to learn, but because they need to learn to respect you as an individual human being who also has rights and needs. Because there will come a day, if you've had a family, where they will all leave home, and one day you could be sitting across the table from your partner and think, well, who is this person? Because we've been on parallel tracks for so many years, paying the mortgage, taking the kids to football, doing all of this, and you can find that you've got an empty basket, not an empty nest, but an empty soul almost, and it can be incredibly devastating. So it's time to start planning for that future, planning already to start letting go. If you do have kids, stepping back from being mum a little bit, being more than mum, and looking upon yourself as being more than mum, and not feeling guilty for that, because you do matter. So another thing is that if you, again, for people who are in a long-term relationship, that's the time to look at your relationship and start to take stock. I've got a friend who's a relationship counsellor, and she said one of the saddest things is that often by the time people get around to going to have counselling, some problems are so entrenched and so deep-seated that it's much harder to fix them. And she says if only, some people see going to counselling as an admission of defeat or failure, whereas in fact going to counselling in a proactive way when you identify that there are the beginnings of problems is actually an investment in getting strategies to recover so that you can rebuild for this future life. Now, not everybody is in a relationship, of course. Some people might be at an age where they might be repartnering. It might be that their partner's died or they've been separated. And as the previous speaker was saying, and I won't spend too much time on this because she covered it very well, we can go back into the dating market and forget that we are just as capable of getting sexually transmitted diseases. And even if you're starting to have menopause symptoms, you can still conceive. And so it is quite important to negotiate, and don't leave it up to the partner. If you are heterosexual, don't leave it up to the man to take that initiative. maybe take some condoms of your own in your handbag so that there's no excuses about, oh, I didn't bring any, and try to be brave enough to bring that subject up. But one of the problems for if you're going out with slightly older men is that about over the age of 45, about 40% of men are starting to get a little bit of erectile dysfunction. So for older women, sometimes negotiating the condom thing can be that by the time the packet's been ripped open, you've worked out which way's in and which way's out, and you finally unrolled it, the need for it is long gone. So one of the things that I suggest, hopefully, I must admit this light's bad for me and I can't see the femdom. Femidom. The female condom, I don't know if you've heard about the female condom. It's quite large, it's got 2 rings and one fits around the cervix and the other actually goes over the labia. So it is actually a much better protection against things like genital herpes because there's less skin-on-skin contact. The good thing about it is you can put it in earlier in the evening. And so you don't have to have that whole clumsy, glitchy stopping and all the rest. If you use a good quality personal lubricant with it, and when it comes to personal lubricant, I always recommend silk, and I believe there are some sachets still at the back that you can take, because silk is made from an extract of the kiwi fruit vine with just a drip of citrus preservative in it, so it's very, very natural, because a lot of the commercially manufactured lubricants are really loaded with chemicals, and some of them have even got sugar in them for some reason, and they can really help trigger thrush and all sorts of things. So get a good quality lubricant. But the one thing people have said about these is that sometimes they can make a bit of a sort of a noise. So maybe sort of turn the radio up a bit or something. But hopefully the flights of passion will mean that that doesn't matter. But they're certainly worth considering because they can help to overcome that whole awkwardness about the whole condom issue. Also, if you're on your own, as I said before, everybody is on a sexual journey. Even a celibate nun is on a sexual journey because she still has to negotiate those feelings. She still has feelings. She still has drives and impulses. Everybody is on a sexual journey. And there may be people who don't have a partner, don't want a partner. I've had women who've come into the shop and said that they were, married for 40, 50 years. They love their partner very much. Their partner's passed on. They don't want to get into a new relationship. But that doesn't mean they don't still have sexual needs. And there is a bit of a taboo in our society about the idea of self-pleasuring and touching yourself and exploring yourself and so on. But it's actually very, very healthy because sexual arousal gets the blood flowing to the area, gets the natural lubricants working. It's like a sort of a workout. So there's a book that I'd like to recommend which has been around for years and revised many, many times. And it's a fantastic book, if I can lay my hand on it. Sex for One, The Art of Self-Loving. Betty Dodson is now in her 70s. I don't know if you remember back in the early 70s, late 60s, there was this thing in America of women all sitting around with hand mirrors looking at their vaginas. And she was the pioneer of encouraging women to not be frightened of themselves, to look at themselves, to understand and learn about themselves. And this book is in praise of masturbation. And it's a fantastic read. And there, in a relationship or not in a relationship, the more you learn about your own pleasure responses, the more you learn to have control of your own pleasure, the better it is for everybody, and the more you can guide your partner, because men aren't issued with, a handbook on how to be good lovers. And so many people say, "Oh, my partner's a hopeless lover," but it's a little bit. It's a bit unfair to blame them if you wouldn't know. If somebody said, "Well, what would make you feel good?" and you go, "Well, I don't know. It's really he'd better find that out." So as we go into our 40s, getting informed is also a really important part of feeling good about ourselves. Because as I say, when I heard that talk on menopause, it was all like, "What?" And I went and did research, and it was very reassuring. But the perimenopausal period, in the lead up to menopause, there can be changes. There can be, if you've suffered from PMS, you could find it becomes a lot more severe, or your periods might become heavier, or you might find you have bigger mood swings, or get a bit weepy, or so on. if you understand that that's a normal part of what's happening to you, you can deal with it. If you think that if you're ignorant about what's going on and you don't have a clue, it's going to be much more stressful, and you're going to maybe blame your partner again, or your relationship, or your kids, or other things for something that's just something that you need to negotiate. And then moving on into the menopause, other symptoms kick in, and one that it's a popular myth that women lose their libido at menopause, and it's not true that they lose their libido, but they do become slower to become aroused. And so for older women, taking time and learning about foreplay is a lot more important than when you're young. And foreplay is something that starts 24 hours beforehand. Foreplay is having a bit of a giggle as you wash the dishes together, or going for a walk in the park, or talking. It's not sitting in front of the telly, looking straight ahead, and then at 11 o'clock at night going, all right, then how about it? You know, because it's not... It takes a bit longer than that to get things off the ground. Similarly, around menopause, some women find that their natural lubrication reduces, and that's when it's really important to use the personal lubricant. Also, the walls of the vagina can become thinner and more easily abraded and a bit more sensitive. So again, you need to take that into account, and the lubrication will stop any soreness, because there's nothing more that puts you off sex than some sort of soreness, and persevering through soreness is a really bad idea, because it acts like aversion therapy, and you know, makes it much less likely that you're going to want to go on and do anything. But another thing, as part of negotiating with the slower arousal and the negotiating of your sex life, it's important to try to start talking to your partner. Now, it's really hard, no matter how long you've been together, it's really hard to talk about sex. I understand that. Still find it very difficult. Sometimes you feel like if you've got a male partner, you've got to tiptoe on eggshells in case their ego, you know, it's like, how do I say this without him thinking I'm putting him down? Or so we often don't talk about things. But talking about the fact that sometimes I would like to kiss and cuddle or fool around a little bit, but I don't want to go all the way. Because one of the biggest things that women say to me is that if their partner makes a sexy joke or pinches them on the bum or does one of those things that they know is a kind of a, you know, lead up, they often freeze and they don't respond, because they don't want to commit themselves to saying, okay, that's the green light, now we're going to go right through and do the whole thing. If men can learn that you can have a little bit of fun and you can get a little bit turned on, and then you can back off and you can stop and you can, or if they even learn to put up with the fact for a while that you might actually start making love and then lose the mood, and they can stop. It's going to be frustrating for them in the short term, but in the long term, their female partner is then more likely to be playful, because she will know that she has more control, that she is able to say no if she doesn't want to go on. And often just the ability of knowing that you have that option means you don't need to take that option. You will continue and enjoy sex. It's the fear of committing to something that you think you might not like. Having said that, don't wait for sex to be spontaneous and to get swept away by lust, because you may never have sex again as long as you live. Tests have shown, I saw an interesting documentary where they did some tests with women where they wired them up to all these electrodes and they showed them sexually explicit material. And the women were going, nah, nothing, not interested. But the electrodes were showing that their bodies were starting the sexual arousal process. The blood was starting to go to their genitals. All the things were starting to happen. So there's a bit of a gap sometimes between what our body's doing in our brain. So that's what Bettina Arndt caused quite a bit of a stir by saying, even if you don't feel like it, just get started. And she's not saying, you know, you've got to lie down and be a martyr and have this awful sex that you don't want just to keep your partner happy. But what she's saying is, be a little bit flexible, because you may find that once you do start, the arousal kicks in after you've started. So allow for the option of getting started. And again, that's more likely if you know that you have the right to say, actually, I'm not really feeling like it. That's a hard one to negotiate, but the men will get the payoff. If you're in a heterosexual relationship, the men will get the payoff later because you will be more lighthearted, more playful. The other thing that I found with older women, and this is something for just what they were saying before about the exercise being me time, with this slow arousal problem, because I found when I really started to hit menopause, and then I got a bit some treatment, and my symptoms went down, but my libido had completely gone out the window. And I thought, hang on, I run a sex shop, I can't have no libido, this is ridiculous. And I just thought about it consciously, and I started to try to think what I could do, and it was something that I needed to do alone. So I started to look for things on the internet that maybe I found slightly arousing. I started to indulge reading a little bit of erotic literature, practicing that feeling on my own of feeling aroused, of what that feels like, that sort of warm, tingly sensation and that. Because every time you get aroused, your body's doing that blood flow, all of that stuff's happening. And by practicing, you might have a time when you're going to be home alone, you're not going to be interrupted. You might run a nice bath, maybe have a glass of wine, light some candles or something, and read an erotic story or watch a film where there's a scene in it you find erotic. And just allow that without going on to do anything else more. Just practicing feeling aroused. Because the more you allow yourself to just feel aroused and then move on, the quicker you will become aroused when you want to become aroused. And the more positive your inner thoughts will be about that. You will help you to counter some of those negative sort of, oh no, I don't want to. Because I think sometimes having sex with a long-term partner is a bit like going to the gym. It's really hard to get started, but when you have, you feel great, and you wish you'd done it more often. So think of it in that way, and it is. And the thing is, I think sex is both the glue in a relationship, and it's how adults play. Children might make mud pies or dress up in mum's high heels. We might put on a bit of sexy lingerie or rub massage oil all over each other. We forget about our dignity. We have a bit of a giggle. I liked it once when Gretel Colleen said, it's all right to laugh during sex, just don't point. And learn to touch each other again too, because it's very easy to become predictable. I was saying earlier that there was a time in our relationship where I knew that it would be touch the left nipple, 1, 2, 3, move the hand to my thigh, 4, 5, 6, oh yeah, right, next a bit. And sometimes in order to get that, take the sex away from being directly sexual, and do something like learn about some massage. And there are lots of wonderful educational DVDs around now, which are sort of quite sexy to watch, and they're not porn, so you're learning something, but you're also watching something a bit sexy with your partner. And like here's a great one called Great Sex for Women After 50. Sexual fitness, getting your body fit for good sex. But there's one here that is called Tantric Massage. And with Tantric Massage, I actually often advocate a lot of the things of Tantra. Not that you want to wear a saffron robe and become some sort of Indian guru. But the great thing about Tantra is it takes the focus away from genitals coming together. Because in the West, we associate sex with penetrative intercourse. And there are plenty of people who can't, for some reason, have penetrative intercourse and still have great sex lives. And Tantra helps you to enjoy all of the senses, not just focus on the genitals all the time. Tantric Massage teaches you massage techniques of the body that proceed to also massage techniques for the genitals. And so it can be a really great way to have that foreplay, learn to touch each other in new ways, learn to enjoy touch in new ways, which isn't focused purely on trying to turn your partner on. Because learning to touch each other again, you can reach a point where you think, we haven't hugged or kissed for such a long time. So touching is very important. Now, the other thing to remember, don't compare your sex life with other people. Some people feel as though if they're not having sex every day, you know, that they've got a terrible sex life. It's about quality, not quantity. And nobody's standing at the end of the bed with a card going 7.5. It's not an Olympic event. If you are having a good time, if you like having sex every day, great. Apparently there was a lady, someone was saying they met a lady of 85 who was saying she was devastated since her husband had died because they used to have sex twice a day, every day. But there are other people who might like sex once a month. There might be some people who actually only have sex twice a year, but when they do, they really enjoy it. And a mechanical, obligatory, routine, boring sex every day is not as enjoyable and as exciting as a really enjoyable session once a month. So stop comparing yourself with other people. Don't believe what other people say. They're not having as much sex as they say. The more they talk about it, the less they're probably doing it. And the other thing, again, for people who've been in a long-term relationship, and this is one that actually I was advised of at one point by somebody, and I found it incredibly helpful, and we've integrated it into our relationship, and it was an absolute relationship saver. And that was sometimes make a date on which you agree you will have sex. And a lot of women say to me, "Oh my God, I won't be in the mood," you know. And on that date, try to go somewhere else, because there's no doubt that your own home is so prosaic sometimes. You lie there and you're thinking, "Oh God, I haven't dusted the curtain rails." And, "Oh my God, the teenager in the next bedroom is going to come in a minute," or whatever. We'll spend money on the cinema, we'll spend money on a restaurant. Why not spend the money on a hotel room? And then you've got that fantasy that you're in a neutral territory, you're somewhere new. Don't have a big dinner, because if you get too full of food, you're going to be lethargic. But take with you some really exquisite little treats that you like, little snacky treats. The most expensive you can afford, because this date is about pampering yourselves and having pleasure, because you're worth it, as they say in L'Oreal. And make a conscious effort to create a sensual environment. I'm a great believer in candlelight, because as you get older, candlelight is so flattering to the skin. Burn a heap of candles. If you're very shy, I say, well, just burn one tea light in the corner of the room and then bring it nearer to the bed as you get more confident, you know. But light some candles, maybe scented candles, so that there's a lovely aroma. What you're trying to do is draw all the senses in. Bring along a music machine so you can play a little bit of music, because music that you find sexy, and that can be anything from heavy metal to Enya, it's what you find sexy, not some bump and grind that's supposed to be sexy. The music can help you to sort of get carried away. It can also cover some of those little awkward noises that can occur at times. And generally think about all of those things. Now, another thing I just want to briefly talk about too is about what you wear. When you get ready for this date, remember what it was like when you had your first boyfriend and you're about 16 and you were going to go out. How long did you take agonising over what you were going to wear and doing your makeup and shaving your legs and doing all that? Put that much effort into getting ready for this date. And get ready separately to your partner. Don't be in the bathroom together while he's doing his nasal hairs. And keep a little bit of allure. And consider wearing some sort of lingerie. And when I say lingerie, that can be anything from just a nice matching bra and knickers set, but not your cottontails, and your white bra with the stretchy under, you know, and the grey bits. Or something, look, for self-esteem, as women get older, often they have body image problems. They might have stretch marks, they might have surgery scars, they might have parts of their body that they just don't like very much. Lingerie can be very useful from that point of view. One woman told me that she had really bad stretch marks and she bought this little waist cincher thing, and because her partner wasn't bothered about the stretch marks, he said, "You look gorgeous, I love you anyway," but she couldn't stop thinking about them. When she had that on, she could just forget about it and let go. Or wearing a sheer lace nightie. You don't even have to take some of these garments, you don't have to take them off. But it's a garment that makes you feel sexy, not dressing up because you think this was what your partner might find sexy. The idea is that you feel sexy, then you send a message of being playful, and you look sexy because you look as though you're ready to have sex. So some people say, oh, my husband should like me as I am. Why should I make an effort for him? I don't know why people, you know, their love partner, why would you not want to give them a gift or something that's pleasurable? But also, if you've got visitors, you don't go, oh, well, they can take my house as it is. You guarantee you'll vacuum and you'll put the dishes away and you'll do things because you've got visitors. So why would you not make a little bit of effort for your love partner as a gift? So I used to find sometimes I would think, oh my God, you know, this date thing, I'm not going to feel like, you know, in the afternoon I might have had a row with the kids. I'm thinking, oh God, tonight's the day. But I then found that by the time I'd packed all the candles and little bits and pieces and worked out what I was going to wear and had my shower and I was putting my makeup on, that is foreplay. That is anticipation. By the time we went on that date, I was already more in the mood. And the beautiful thing about saying that we will have sex tonight is it takes the pressure off both of you. You're not sitting there all evening thinking, do I feel like it? Don't I feel like it? He's not sitting there all evening thinking, have I said the wrong thing? Well, you know. And if at the end of the day it's not the best sex you've ever had, it's not going to kill you. And so it's not about having awful sex every day, but it's about committing to having sex sometimes. And I have never found that there's been a time in the end where I've thought, I wish I hadn't done that. Because the whole thing's been fun. You've had the beautiful wine and you've had the lovely snacks and the chocolates and you've been in a great environment in a hotel room and had a spa bath and all that. So you've had fun anyway. You know, so really be prepared to be playful with your partner and a bit adventurous. Similarly with erotica, when I opened the shop there was almost no erotica available for women. Now there's a plethora. You can get erotic fairy tales, erotic travel tales, all sorts. Sexual fantasies can be a really good starting point. Nancy Friday asked women to send in their actual sexual fantasies for My Secret Garden, and it is such a revealing read. Quite erotic, quite an eye-opener. Read that and you'll know there's nothing you've ever fantasised about that's really weird. There's one in here about a gorilla which I'll leave you to discover. She later did another volume called Women on Top, and it was quite interesting. She wanted to see how women's sexual fantasies had changed with the onset of feminism. So that was quite an interesting experiment. But the other book I brought in is The Best of the Best Women's Erotica. There's now a publisher called Cleese Press, and every year they bring out Best Women's Erotica 2012 and all the rest. And then they make anthologies of the very best stories. These are written by women, for women. They're erotic, not pornographic. They're explicit, but they're not ugly, they're not brutal. The women are equal participants, which is very important. A lot of pornography is really off-putting for women because the women in them are just a set of orifices, really. You know, they might as well not be there almost. So explore the wonderful world of women's erotica as part of your practicing getting aroused routine, and you might discover there's a whole new wonderful world out there of reading, bedtime reading, that you never thought about. So it's never too late. There's a lovely long journey ahead of you of a lot of fun, so I would just like to really encourage you to look upon the next 40 years as the time of your life. You've done the things for other people, now it's time to do things for yourself and enjoy it. Thank you very much.